Not a good look for our profession.
How in the name of common sense did this ever get this far? Vaccines are not seek and destroy missions.
Because he was so severe.
This is nuts.
One of the top 20 things that she has discovered with her research company, Progenobiome, medicine has been corrupted. Where we go from here now, I don't know. Well, it doesn't work.
So angry, punishable with jail time.
Literally, this makes me believe we live in the Matrix. Like,
Deadliest year in U.S. history.
It wasn't a question of if, but when.
The first red.
if it doesn't work and it's safe, put it in a little Fauci Pez dispenser, give it to the patient, and shut the family up.
It's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Gave Fauci an award for being a hero of the pandemic.
This has been a problem.
These were lies.
Let's talk about the healthcare professionals supporting this.
In the meantime, what was going on behind the scenes?
Irony of the whole thing is,
Harvey's 100% correct.
This is freaking annoying.
ultimately we need to have hope for America.
What is going on here? What has poisoned your mind? Buckle up, kids. All right, welcome back to BS Free MD. We have a great show today. We are going to talk to Chloe Harrouche. At 23, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, but her real battle began after treatment, navigating the silence around fertility, hormones, and long-term health. Instead of guidance, she found noise, biohacking rabbit holes, restrictive wellness trends, and conflicting advice at every turn. She did what few have the courage or clarity to do. She built something better. Chloe is the founder and CEO of the Lanby, a modern concierge medical practice designed to unify traditional care and wellness with a proactive, personalized approach. And if you know anything about us at BS Free MD, we love the personalized approach. Her mission, spare others the confusion and chaos she endured, and to create the healthcare experience she desperately needed but couldn't find. Today, we are diving into that story, the cracks in the system, the culture of disempowerment, and hopefully you'll learn something about getting the kind of care that actually helps to take your health in your own hands. Because as we have said over and over again, our mission at BS Free MD is to help you be your own best doctor. Let's get it on. Welcome, Chloe, to BS Free MD. We're so happy to have you.
So happy to be here. Excited to have this conversation with you guys.
Outstanding. So you are a healthcare CEO. Where did that journey start? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up here.
Well, I've always been obsessed with medicine. It started in high school. I loved biology, loved chemistry, decided to pursue bioengineering when I was in undergrad at Penn. And then realized I didn't want to be a doctor, but I still wanted to stay within the sphere of healthcare. So I went into consulting and just loved being in and around hospitals, which is such a weird thing to love. But I just loved the experience of working closely with doctors and understanding how they operate and how I could make them more efficient. And, ultimately just sort of seeing what happens behind the scenes. But it wasn't until I was myself diagnosed with breast cancer at the very young age of 23 that, my exposure to healthcare took a very different turn. I had no family history. This really just came out of nowhere. And through that experience, I think it just really opened my eyes to what it feels like to be a patient today, right? Like when you're in consulting, when you're studying medicine, you never think about the patient experience. And so for me, being in the patient seat at first, I was like, wait, this is really cool. Like I get to see what it's like to be a patient, having had been diagnosed with stage 2 cancer. I was like, this is kind of cool. I get to see what it's like to be, receiving chemotherapy. Like it was almost more like I was getting a firsthand view of that. And it almost felt cool. And then it stopped feeling cool when, I started to feel like, okay, what does the rest of my life look like? And these doctors that I had put on a pedestal weren't able to give me the answers that I was looking for. And that's when I started to change my, feeling towards healthcare, where, at first it was in complete awe. Like I really felt like these people are my superheroes. And to a certain extent, I still feel that way. But I think the system doesn't set them up for success, and definitely doesn't set up patients for success. And that's when I sort of decided, okay, I need to be able to create an experience that actually takes into account what people today are craving and what they need in order to get healthy.
Was there any, can you kind of hone in a little bit? Was there any key sort of specific things that were, was it the cancer treatment specifically? Was it about the billing or the personal lack of
Yeah.
personal? I mean, any kind of things that hit home to you that was really a big problem?
Yes. So that the standard of care was actually very standard. Like there were no question marks. I wanted to be as aggressive as possible. And so I did all of the things. I did mastectomy, I did chemotherapy, radiation. I was willing to sort of do whatever my doctors suggested because I had this mentality of I want to be the best patient. I want them to be happy with me. I want them to feel like I'm saying yes to everything and I'm going to outperform any other patient. Like I had this mentality of I want to be the best. And then when it came to, the time in which I was done with treatment, there was no more standard of care other than taking tamoxifen for the next 10 years. I went back to my doctor and I said, okay, now what? Like, give me my next thing to do. And they were like, well, you're done. And I'm like, it can't be that I'm done. Like, I need to think about the next, 50 plus years of my life. What does that look like? What should I be eating? What should I be taking? How should I be thinking about exercise? Like, tell me what to do. Give me a plan. And there was no plan. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I couldn't believe that there is so much research out there on breast cancer prevention, and these doctors that are brilliant couldn't tell me what to do. And that's when I started to sort of take a step back and say, okay, why is this the case? Like, why can't they guide me on this? Is it because they don't have time? Is it because they literally just don't have the training? Is it because they don't care? I don't think it's just one of those things. I think it's actually the combination. It's the fact that they don't have time because their incentives are as such that the more patients they see in a day, the more money they make. So they're really only able to spend 15 minutes with each patient max. Then it becomes the training piece, right? Like oncologists, surgeons, radiation oncologists, none of them know about wellness. Like, what a crazy thought that I even could think that. And by the way, obviously we could talk about primary care, right? But like, why did I even think? Why was there an expectation that these professionals knew about wellness? And then, lastly, I don't think it's that they don't care. I think it's that the system sets them up to fail. And that's what I, really wanted to tackle is, there's a mismatch of expectations between patients who want this information and not knowing where to turn. And so, my doctors at the time said, why don't you go meet with the in-house nutritionist? And so I did. And it was so disappointing. Like the research that they were citing was from 10, 15 years ago, right? Like there's so much coming out today about wellness and, prevention that wasn't factored into that. And so I felt like I can't trust these people. They're not listening to what's, cutting edge and the latest research. So I dismissed that. And then I started to say, okay, maybe I really just need a quarterback. Maybe I need someone who understands this complex health history that I now have, and also understands that I'm very motivated to be proactive about my health going forward. So isn't just going to give me the run of the mill, like eat healthy, exercise, blah, blah, blah. But it was really going to be someone who's like going to be targeted about, okay, well, you now are sensitive to hormones. You are now sensitive to, inflammation, whatever it might be. Let's create a nutrition plan and a supplement regimen and an exercise plan that factors in your age, right? Like you also are going to eventually want to have children maybe. So what does that look like? How do we make sure that the approach that we take to your wellness also factors in fertility? Because, we could get into this as a separate conversation, but biohacking for men, right, is very different than someone in their childbearing years, a woman in childbearing years who wants to reproduce. So I wanted to find this ideal doctor that understands all of these different paradigms. And I was willing to spend whatever it took. Like I was committed to investing my dollars into my health because, I knew what it would look like if I didn't. And so, I went through that search and I found that primary care, as you guys know very well, doesn't look like that. It's, they don't have the time to pick up the phone and call your specialists and understand your health history. They don't have the time to research the latest and greatest on wellness. And so even those generalists, right, like we think about primary care as your first line of defense, the generalists, the people who are going to connect the dots between all of the different aspects of your health, they were also not set up for success. So if primary care, which is like ultimately designed to be covering 80% of your health needs, isn't factoring in wellness, how could we realistically expect that that's the source of education around prevention?
It makes me sad because we're old. And when I think back to our training and what we used to do, I mean, the system was quite different. Not that we were perfect, but we were the quarterbacks of someone's healthcare and did do a lot of those things as far as, calling the specialist, trying to spend some time. But it's the system's changed so much there. I mean,
Well,
the doctors don't even set foot in the hospital to visit you when you're ill. That they just can't. So
I think it's really important for the listeners to understand, and I've said this. I mean, I said this on Cheryl Atkinson's show. The system is not broken. It's not broken at all. The system works perfectly for the people that get paid by the system.
yeah,
And that's what you have to understand. All you have to do is follow the money. The money's not, yeah, sure. Our orthopedic surgeons in the United States are paid more than anyone in the world. I get that.
For sure.
But it's still a fraction, a tiny fraction of what the CEO of the hospital makes.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you have to follow the money. We have made healthcare all about a business, and a standard business model does not work in healthcare. And I've said this a million times. If you have a $4 trillion a year industry that relies on sick people to feed it, you will never get well people from that system. It's impossible.
Exactly. And I think we need to bifurcate the two. Like we shouldn't necessarily be going to the healthcare system for wellness. But there is a business model that does support wellness and does support proactive. And that's where subscriptions, I think, and that's where sort of how we thought about the model for the Lanby, that's where subscriptions realign incentives between providers and patients. Because now you have a model where you want retention, like you want patients to be happy, not necessarily utilize you when they're sick, because that's when utilization gets too high, but utilize you enough where they want to be members long-term. And, because we can charge what we want to charge, this also gives us the space and the time to be able to spend with patients, not just 8 minutes, but 45 minutes, an hour, 80 minutes, however long we need to really get to the root cause of their health, what's bothering them, and also find those same opportunities to optimize their health. Be proactive, not just think about what are the symptoms that we need to address right in here and now, but okay, you have a family risk of Alzheimer's, you have a family risk of heart disease, you have a family risk of cancer, whatever it might be. Let's mitigate that. Let's build resilience in your body. How do we do that? And that's where the wellness comes in. That's where like the day-to-day of like, how do we educate people on building a healthier you, to your earlier point, makes all the difference.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think where modern medicine, Western medicine went completely off the rails was when we started to do preventative care, because we suck at it. And I hate the word preventative medicine, because medicines aren't for prevention. They're for treating disease. We are trained to diagnose and treat disease. That's what we should do. But as soon as the pharma companies understood that you could, write Prilosec prescriptions for the next 25 years, and then everything, all this money and research got poured into chronic disease management.
I think there was a mixed bag, though. I think there was the sort of auspices of, we should learn more about proper exercise and proper eating and nutrition, et cetera, to avoid the patients coming in. But then it turned into, you're right, like a big pharma.
No, it's a different skill set.
Yes.
To use the football analogy, we're not the quarterback, we're the coach. And that's different. But going to the punter and asking the punter to throw the ball 75 yards, you will lose every single game. And that's what we're doing. Like, we're going to somebody, like when I love doing urgent care because I love to treat pneumonias, because that was the biggest killer of people for up until about 1960, believe it or not. Now it's an inconvenience.
Right.
That's great medicine. Giving somebody Jardiance for the rest of their life when really it's, diet and exercise can essentially cure type 2 diabetics. That's a completely different paradigm. And we get those blurred. And I understand the confusion for people because it's like, okay, this is total nonsense. This is really good.
Yeah.
And they can be in the same family. You get a punter and a quarterback.
Yeah. But I think the good thing is that we're starting to see consumers understand the difference, and they're starting to ask for this type of care. And so I think that's going to ultimately lead to a revolution. And I think we're already starting to see it happen, right? Like there's more and more pressure for doctors to prescribe less and for systems to change. And, people are asking the right questions, like, what about my diet? Or how can I do this more holistically? How do I avoid taking an antibiotic? Like people want less medicine. I think there's a lot you can say about RFK, but I think he's at least lifting the hood or whatever the saying is around like what's wrong here? Like what's wrong with medicine? And I think we never really spoke about, okay, what are the risks of vaccines, or what are the risks of being on a statin for the rest of your life? Or what are the risks of GLP-1s, right? Like there's all these things that we talk about, like all the pros, but now people are like, wait, but like, what about the risks, and less is more is I think where we're headed.
And I think to your point, I think you're right. People are waking up, and with social media and all the things happening in the world in the last 5 years, et cetera, people are starting to think, okay, I need to have like a toolkit of people in my life for my health, not just my primary care doctor, who is still big pharma focused, and they see that they don't have time for certain things. I mean, it's great if you got an earache or appendicitis, but if I need help with my holistic stuff, maybe I need my naturopath or my chiropractor or my acupuncturist, and you have to build that toolkit yourself.
That's precisely the problem that I wanted to solve. I don't want people to have a mishmash, siloed care team. Like that's so ineffective. To have your primary care doctor be the one to prescribe you antibiotics whenever they can, because they just want to get you out the door and make you feel like you got whatever you came for. Like that's their reason for prescribing. And then you have your acupuncturist that's like, oh my God, no, don't take that. You need to be taking these herbs. And then you have a naturopath that's like, oh wait, also take these pellets. It's like you literally become another pharmacy of all these different supplements and medications, and you don't know what to take. And it ends up contradicting each other. And then your liver is all inflamed because it's like, what is happening? Why am I on all these supplements? Right? It's just a constant detox. And so what I wanted to do was sort of avoid that. I wanted to get rid of all the siloed care and create a more usable primary care solution, right? Like primary care, let's get rid of like all the different pressures from the system. If we were to build primary care from first principles, what would it look like? What does it need? It needs someone who, from a doctor perspective, you need someone who, yes, is board certified in family medicine, ideally internal medicine. You need someone, though, that also has some other training, whether it be they're attending functional medicine conferences, they've been researching longevity, they have an additional board certification in integrative medicine, whatever it means, they've demonstrated an interest in being and are open-minded to wellness. They don't necessarily need to be the ones to tell you what to do, but they need to be sort of more supportive and open-minded to that way of thinking, right? They're not going to just be quick to prescribe. They really want to figure out what the root cause is of your symptom. And then you also should have someone on the wellness side, whether it's a coach, whether it's a nutritionist. We believe it should be a registered dietitian so that they can really work collaboratively with the physician. And that person should be saying, okay, I understand from your doctor that we want to get to the root cause of your cholesterol issues. Let's focus on your diet. Let's figure out what is causing you to have higher cholesterol, and let's tweak your diet accordingly. Whether it's we need to do some advanced testing and then we can figure that out, or we could just sort of look at, the particle sizes, whatever it might be. Let's figure that out, and let's come up with a tailored plan to address that without you jumping on a statin, because by the way, statins don't necessarily work on everyone.
Yeah,
So
we're
I think
not.
it's that also.
Yeah, we're not very big on statins. I started calling bullshit on statins in 2010 when the big meta-analysis came out, and I was like, yeah, this is bad.
Okay. So this is the vision of the Lanby, right? Rethinking the primary care. So tell us more. So how I'm thinking, okay, that's great. Going along that lines, what if someone then really could benefit from, they need more certain types of fish oil and a balanced, does the integrative physician, primary care doc, I mean, if they don't know enough about that, does the nutritionist, do you have to have do you have a naturopath influence? So what else are you using? And how does the Lanby work?
So our physicians do get trained in functional medicine and integrative medicine. It's part of our onboarding process. It allows us to create a certain level of consistency across providers. And also like a shared language between all the different providers, right? So that they can understand when to leverage advanced diagnostics, when to leverage supplements, when to focus on, labs, et cetera. So when we, let's say, want to prescribe someone, or not prescribe, but recommend increasing their omega-3 intake, whether it's through a fish oil or through their diet, their care plan will include recommendations on how they can increase that nutrient, right? So whether it's eating more sardines or eating more walnuts or eating more wild fish, but then also we can sort of pair that with a fish oil supplement. We also look at their labs to figure out what is their actual omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, right? Like, we're not just prescribing everyone the same supplements. Obviously, a fish oil is something that majority of people can and should benefit from. But, there are other ones that are a little bit more nuanced that maybe not everyone should be taking. Vitamin B12 as one example, right? Like, everyone hears, oh, vitamin B12,
Yes.
let me get some more energy.
Right.
And great. Like, and then, you sort of take that in a vacuum without having established your baseline. You don't really know how to track that. So ultimately for us, the way in which we approach nutrition, exercise, sleep, supplements, medication, it all starts with your labs. And we run very extensive labs.
So I'm going to hop in and ask, because I think it all starts with your epigenetics. And are you guys doing any testing of that? Because to your point about the vitamins and the B12, I started down my own bunny trail. I'm like, I'm a doctor. I've had some stuff done. I can figure this out. And it was a disaster because I can't take methylated vitamins. And I found out the hard way. And I've got training in this. So yeah, go ahead and let's talk about the labs and epigenetics.
You can test for the MTHFR mutation in labs. Yeah. And that is something that we look for. There are other ways to figure out if someone has the MTHFR mutation without actually testing it, just based on their levels. But that is obviously something we look for. And generally, when we recommend a multivitamin, it's always a methylated multivitamin, just to make sure that that person can absorb it properly. But to your point on genetics, there's a new genetic test that we've always recommended doing genetics, but there's a specific new genetic test that we've really, really been loving having at the Lanby. And it's a great way for us to personalize also someone's plan, whether it's like, potential risk, and also just how you absorb and how you can, what all of those things I think are super, super important. So yes, we do a big lean on labs, but we also are starting to do a bigger lean on genetics. It used to be that we were using, just genetics because, people wanted to know, again, like family risk, like what should I be mitigating? No one was really thinking about it from the perspective of absorption. And I think that that's a really, really important aspect to be factoring in when you think about someone's care plan.
Well, it's fascinating to me because, in allopathic medicine, or whatever you want to call what we do, it's always been kind of a one size fits all. Oh, knee-jerk reaction. You have a high blood sugar. You're a diabetic. Here, take metformin. Here, take a statin. Here, take lisinopril. Bing, bing, bing. It's all very driven by the algorithm. It's not driven by any, largely, it's not driven by any real thoughtfulness. But you can make the exact same mistake with supplements. It's like everyone needs to
Yeah,
Totally.
exactly.
everyone needs to be on B12. Everyone needs to be on trimethylglycine. Everyone needs to be, and I find it kind of hilarious, listening to some of these major influencers where, like Dana White was treated by Gary Brecka's thing. And, it's like, what did they do for Dana? Well, the first thing they did is they completely changed his diet. They put him on essentially a carnivore diet. And then they load up all of these other supplements. And like I said to May, I said, well, you don't know what works, but it worked. So there's no way in the world you're going to stop doing what worked. So was it really just his diet change and nothing else? Well, probably. I mean, that probably did 90% of it. And all of the other stuff can just be expensive window dressing that, makes the provider very wealthy and does basically nothing for the patient, because the patient did what they really should have done, which was just go on a keto diet and exercise.
Right. So often I think these diets are just like, let's clean things up. Like ultimately, like it doesn't really matter what the diet is as long as you're imposing some thoughtfulness to how you're
Yes.
consuming food.
Exactly.
You're just going to think about it more, right? Like, so I totally agree with you. I think that social media is in so many ways a good thing because it's increasing awareness around what are the questions we should be asking. But I think the problem is that people use it also as a tool for finding out what the answers should be, and it shouldn't, right? Like it should inform you on what you don't know, but then you should be able to go to a trusted provider who can look at your history, who can look at your baseline levels and say, this is what I recommend. The problem is that people don't feel like they have that connection to a clinical provider. And it doesn't have to be necessarily someone in the traditional healthcare system, but it should be someone who has a clinical background and can look at your labs and see what your baseline is, look at your epigenetics, look at more data to be able to say, this is the way in which you should be approaching your health. And this is how we want you to prioritize, because there's a million things we could all do, but how do you prioritize it and track the progress? Most often when we try a new supplement, no one's tracking your progress. So how do you actually know if after 3 months it's making a difference? And then over time, you're like, I'm bored. I want to switch it up. But like, you don't know if that's really something that you should be swapping out or if not, right? Like no one's tracking their progress. That's a crazy phenomenon when it comes to supplements. So that's, I think, a really important thing. And then to your point also about data, and using data to avoid this one size fits all mentality, I think that what we've seen happen in the wellness space is that we're sort of putting more data into the hands of the consumer, which is great. But at the same time, it's also leading to more question marks of like, okay, now what do I do with this data? Like most people, as smart as they are, don't know how to interpret that data. And they're using ChatGPT, they're using their like friends to tell them what to do. And instead, like, again, going back to, it's like, if only there were a place where, again, your primary care could be the guide to interpreting this data, putting it into context with your medical history, and then using that data to inform a path forward. So I think that personalization is like, it's there, but it's just not being packaged properly.
You're so right. I mean, it will, I just can imagine people listening just saying, yes, exactly. Because I'm feeling that exactly with what's happened in my health and life in the last year and a half, 2 years. And I'm a retired doctor. I'm doing exactly that. It says I got my old school primary that doesn't, know about the supplements, and I ended up with a naturopath. Then I've got myself on ChatGPT, and I'm on these Facebook groups for specific things, that struggles I've been having related to hormone replacement and side effects and all kinds of stuff that's happened. And I've had the genetic testing and someone else telling me what supplements to take based on that. And I'm like, oh crap, because some of this stuff they don't agree on, and who do I listen to? And you're right. I mean, now I could take 15 to 20 supplements a day instead of 15 to 20 prescriptions a day, and it becomes overwhelming. And I'm trying to manage me. And like I said, I'm a physician. So
I used to say that to patients all the time. I said, if supplements are natural, why do they look like pills?
The other thing with supplements is I feel like there's like this weird perception that the more supplements you're on, the more of an optimizer you are. Like, people are proud of the fact that they're taking 15 supplements. And I'm like, that's not good.
No.
Like, the goal should be that you don't need these supplements. Like, we should be taking maybe 3 supplements a day. And you should be cycling through based on what your body needs at that given moment in time.
So
Right?
what about though the fact that, I mean, here's the argument is that things have changed so much. Our life, the soil, our food deplete of a lot of these things. And then you throw in someone's epigenetics and whatever's changed because of meds or vaccine or what, all that. I mean, do you think that we can get by with just trying to make food as our medicine? I would love for that to be the case, but I know the chicken I eat now sure as heck isn't the same as the chicken I ate when I was in 5th grade because I could taste
Yeah.
the difference. So,
Yeah.
what is your thoughts on that?
I think, and this goes back to how backwards thinking the nutritionists that worked in these hospitals were. I think it's not about the food choice, like the food category. I think it's about the quality of the food.
Right.
So, for example, when you talk about chicken, you have to make sure that it's pasture raised chicken. When you're talking about meat, red meat, not all red meat is created equal. Let's focus on getting good quality grass fed, grass finished meat. When you talk about vegetables, organic vegetables, when you talk about fruit, the same thing. If you can focus on these things, then your detox pathways will be that much stronger. If you can exercise and sweat, your detox pathways will be that much better. So yes, of course, we're always exposed to microplastics, and there's stuff in our water and there's stuff in our environment. But I think that there is so much we can control just based on what we are putting into our bodies actively. And I think the other issue is that, especially in wellness, like, there's a new bar being marketed to me every single day. And that bar has all the right macronutrients. I'm like meaning to write a blog post about this. It has all the right macronutrients. It has 30 grams of protein. It has no sugar. It has a small amount of carbs. It has high fiber. Great. I'm like, I should be eating this every single day. But actually, if you look at the ingredients, it's like there's just like unexplained. I don't even know how to describe it, but like there's a group of ingredients that they like sort of put in, like our blend, like our enzyme blend, or
Some
our,
chemical stuff
like,
you can't
some
pronounce.
chemical stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I eat this every day, I'm basically going to be dealing with the same long-term risks as if I were to be eating Chick-fil-A every day. Like, there's just processed crap that we're putting into these wellness foods that are hitting the right macro goals, but they're actually just chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, going back to what I was saying, is I do think that it's very easy to get swayed into all of these different directions of like, let's eat a chocolate bar that's 0 sugar and like made with whatever, allulose, I don't know, whatever it is. And, or like so much monk fruit, or, you know, as opposed to just saying like, give me a good organic piece of rich 80% dark chocolate with like real milk that's good quality grass-fed milk, and like that's great. Or like eat some fruits. Don't necessarily consume, by the way, cottage cheese, like 1 serving of cottage cheese has the same macro profile as like one of these perfectly portioned bars. So just, I mean, now we're seeing a huge shortage of cottage cheese. I don't know if you're seeing that where you are, but in New York, it's impossible to find cottage cheese. But
Yeah, I
point
noticed
being is,
that.
yeah. So, you know, if you can get a good Greek yogurt, if you could get good cottage cheese, like
Right.
if you can make a good sardine salad, like these are the things that help you. I know I used to be so grossed out from sardines too, but I just figured out a recipe that actually makes it way more appetizing. It's just swapping it out for tuna. Anyway, we could talk about that separately. But anyway, my point is like, eat real foods.
Yes, there you go. That's what we tell people. It's just we've forgotten because we got swept up in that too. It's like, oh, this is cool, this new perfect macro, whatever. And then after a while, I'm like, this chemical crap can't be good. Like I'm reacting to this sorbitol. I mean, whatever. It's just, you're right. You're better off to just have the real chocolate bar or the real whipped cream, whatever. the real food ingredient.
You mean I'm not supposed to harvest my 26-year-old son's plasma and inject it into myself
Well, that's
like
totally
Brian
different.
Johnson? Like when Brian Johnson all of a sudden didn't he do a liver test or something recently, and he had to like change all of his longevity shit because he was melting himself down?
I don't know.
Oh
Probably
my
doing
God, no, I didn't
Well, he gets
see
no
that.
sun. He looks like
coffee
a ghost.
analog
I'm
or
like, dude, you're
something.
gonna die. We're solar powered. Like you got to be getting tons of sun. Like I get
Oh
it, you
my
get
God.
wrinkly, but like being really old and strong and a wrinkly face because of sun, I'll take that any day over
Wow.
over being a ghost.
So I have to
Wow.
jump in and ask a question because I'm curious as far as, is this mostly a primary care based subscription site, or how much, because everyone's getting, and this is where all the attention's at now, is because half the population, which are women, are all talking about hormones and menopause and the hormone space, which is another big thing, fertility as well as menopause. Do you do and focus much on that?
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah. Women's
what's your
health is
approach to that?
huge.
Okay.
So women's health and men's health are both huge. I mean, I think that both of them are, sort of under discussed in different ways. But when it comes to women's health, we support women through fertility. Ideally, we have a year before they're actually trying to get pregnant before. For us to start working with them, because there is a good amount of detoxing that should take place when you're trying to conceive. So fertility, postpartum, right? Like there's so much that happens during postpartum that women just assume is normal, because we know that postpartum is really hard, but there's a lot there that is not normal, that if you were to just, look under the hood, you would see that there are a lot of levers you can pull to recover more quickly and more smoothly. And then perimenopause is a huge moment in time, not to necessarily start with HRT, which like everyone now is talking about HRT. And I think people are like, when can I start? Perimenopause is really another moment where it's like, okay, how do we build resilience, natural resilience in your body? Like, how do we support your adrenal health? And so that's an area where lifestyle can play a huge role. And then, of course, menopause. Like, how do you, find the right balance of BHRT or HRT, if you want bioidentical or off the shelf, hormone replacement therapy, other things people in menopause are looking at. A lot of women today are also using GLP-1, prescription medication. And so how do you sort of combine all of these different tools in a way that feels personalized and aligned with, again, your health history and your goals? Someone with breast cancer might not have the same appetite for hormone replacement therapy as someone who has no risk and doesn't have any family risk. So these are all the questions that we love to talk about with our members, because again, it should be an individualized approach.
So is the Lanby only brick and mortar, or do you have an online presence? As far like could we, like we live in Sarasota, could we sign up and go through the system?
So we're licensed in a few states, but our only brick and mortar is in New York. So majority of our members are New York based, but we serve the tri-state area. Mm-hmm. We are licensed in California, Florida, and Pennsylvania as well. So we do have some members that are based there that come to New York once a year for their baseline visit, and then do the rest of their care virtually. We do like to see members at least once a year in person, just because it's great for rapport building. So much more can be discussed when you're face to face with someone than when you're just remote. But then we've also had instances with members who are based in California where one year they can come to New York for their baseline and other years they can't. And so we make it work. But I would say majority of our members are New York based. And then we do also have a Just the Labs service. So that's a great one-time assessment where we're not replacing your primary care. We're not providing ongoing care, but we are giving you a functional assessment on your lab. So we run about 85 biomarkers, and then you also have the chance to meet in a consultation with a clinician and wellness advisor to go through the lab results. A lot of these lab assessments are really only focused on giving you a care plan as the output. for us, we really think that conversation is super important because that's when you can talk through your questions. Like, okay, I'm also thinking about this, or I also have heard this. What do you think? So we open the door for more conversation and human to human, element. And then lastly, we also have something called our Just the Wellness series. So we have right now one series available, which is focused on fertility health. And again, that's also available nationwide, fully virtual, not ongoing care, but just how do we support people in educating them about fertility wellness. And we're launching in the fall one that's focused on metabolic health, where we help you leverage a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, to really boost your metabolic health. So similar to what we talked about before when it comes to personalization of data.
So for someone that's living, so in Pennsylvania, California, Florida, out of state of New York, are these monthly subscriptions? Or can it be a pay as you go for a consultation? Tell us a little bit about the different models that you offer.
So we have an annual commitment. So we tend to see people pay on an annual basis. And then we also do have flexible models where if you wanted to pay quarterly, you can do that as well. It's a small premium that you pay to be able to pay on a quarterly basis. But some people prefer that just because they want to be able to sort of factor in what goes out the door more consistently than annually. But as of now, it's an annual commitment.
And if I'm so living here, Florida, thinking this sounds good, how is the PCP that I have through you going to be able to sort of quarterback through, say something that happens and I need my gynecologist down here to do some kind of crazy surgery or orthopedist, or how are they communicating back and forth when I'm out of state and not at the brick and mortar?
So it's honestly the same as if you were in state,
Yeah.
because it's a matter of picking up the phone and making sure that we, understand the approach that gynecologist or OBGYN is taking, that we understand, who are the other players on the care team and how can we sort of make sure that everyone's on the same page, that we are sort of quarterbacking and helping the patient navigate all the different, layers of information that they need to sort of sift through to decide on what the next steps should be. So we can still quarterback regardless of whether or not they're physically in New York. We don't ever go to a hospital and help patients in person navigate the hospital. But we always pick up the phone and make sure that we are helping patients sift through the barrage of information or lack thereof, because oftentimes it's not enough information and patients are feeling like they're just being told what to do without having the opportunity to consider their options. So we sort of serve as a sounding board for our members and say, you know what, let's take a beat. Let's evaluate what other second opinions we can get. Let us help you find those second opinions, whether it be through a specialist in New York or a specialist in Florida. It doesn't really matter as long as that specialist has your records. And so we sort of help facilitate all of that.
I'm just thinking, for some of us that are more old school, I thought it's hard to kind of imagine, and it's going that way, and I've done it going to or having a primary care, without actually being there physically in person, to do it all remotely. But I mean, it's happening with so many things. I mean, you can do it by Zoom. You don't really need to be in the physical presence.
Listen, I agree with you. I think that it's nice knowing that they are close by. That's why we tend to, when we, market and focus on growth, it's focused on New York because we recognize that the in-person component is important. Even if you end up only coming in once a year, it's nice to know that you can go in person for an acute issue or just for your regular, visit. So I hear you. I think the reason we end up having these other members is because there isn't a model like this in those places. And so again, to the earlier point of siloed care, people don't want to have a traditional primary care doctor and also then have a naturopath, because then when it comes down to it, that primary care doctor who is supposed to quarterback the healthcare issue that you're dealing with doesn't have so much information to work with, nor do they have the time. So I think it really depends on how efficient do you want your healthcare team to be, and what are the types of decisions and what's the layer of involvement that you want that primary care doctor to play.
Is this a completely concierge system? Do you take insurance, and what's your thoughts on that?
So the reason we don't take insurance is because, going back to the system, we wanted to build a model based on first principles, and insurance is like the biggest reason why doctors can't play to their strengths. So we didn't want those misaligned incentives to be the reason why, our system had to suck. So insurance is not part of the equation for us in terms of how we bill. So we, again, have a flat fee. Everything is included within that. You're not thinking, oh, I have to call my doctor to talk to them about this issue. What's my copay going to be? Or I need them to go through my lab results. Oh, how much is that going to be? Or I want to send them this imaging report, and now I'm going to have to pay for a visit just to go through the imaging report. So we sort of have everything included as part of that flat fee. So you're never thinking about the cost associated with interacting with your providers. With that said, though, we can give you a receipt that you then submit for reimbursement from your insurance. And then, depending on what your insurance plan is, you can see some reimbursement, or you can use an HSA, FSA, or lifestyle savings account to be able to pay for the membership.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. We are major believers in paying for yourself. I think, excuse me, I think the way you save healthcare is to actually creative destruction, which is take care of yourself, pay for yourself, and then leverage the new technologies that are coming. Because if you're going to see, if everything in medicine is algorithm driven, honestly, I'd rather see the AI than a doctor. Because at least the AI is going to be honest, and it's not going to be manipulated by me telling it that I need a Zithromax prescription for my cold. And so there's a business opportunity for a lot of physicians, even old ones like us, because as AI comes into the foreground, it will take a whole bunch of stuff away from us, which I think it should, honestly. And I think we need to be the ones leveraging it, because if not, it's going to be the insurance companies and the government. And that's not who I want leveraging my healthcare at all, because they've already made a complete mess of it. So there is going to be a major push and value added to the human touch. That is, AI is going to make human connection far more valuable than it ever was before. And people don't they look at it as it's all going to be Terminators. It's not. It's going to be exactly the opposite. The Terminator might drive your car for you, which is going to make your car driving much safer. But then you're going to be able to connect with the people in the car. It's going to AI used correctly humanizes healthcare. It humanizes everything, and that should be the goal.
And I'll tell you sort of where I stand on that, which is, I think that AI is meant to power doctors to be more efficient with their time so that they can spend on the human and invest in the human connection. Oftentimes when you go to the doctor, you see the doctors just like staring at their screen, typing the note. Obviously now there are AI scribes. That's the first layer. But then what's happening behind the scenes when the patient, that note then converts into orders, it converts into a care plan, it converts into all of these different workflows that are automated. But there does need to still be, at least for now, a human physician reviewing and making sure that there's that final sign off, because I don't think we're ready yet for AI to be prescribing medication and to be, making those final calls, right? Like, especially when you look at standard of care and you evaluate, is standard of care appropriate for this patient, right? Like depending on how old they are and what their history is and what their lifestyle and what their goals are. Like, not everything is so clear cut. And I think AI is really good at looking at the data, but it's often sort of the nuances that is what's missing. And when we talk about personalization, I think what we want to use AI for is to just allow doctors to be more efficient so that they can personalize even more.
I couldn't agree more. But that said, at the end of last year, end of 2024, there was a House bill, I think it's 158, I can't remember exactly, which gave machine learning and AI the ability to write prescriptions.
Yeah, but it's scary.
So it's coming. And I predicted it about 6 months before I saw it, when Pfizer and Lilly came out with their, Pfizer Direct, Lilly Direct, where you can order, tirzepatide from Lilly directly from them. I said, these companies are so big, they're so powerful. They're what? The biggest lobby group or second biggest. They're the second biggest lobby group. Pharma's the second biggest. Insurance, health insurance is the first biggest lobby group. They're going to get rid of my medical license because online pharmacies have to harness a physician or nurse practitioner license.
Yeah.
And they want to get rid of it. And the way they're going to get rid of it is going to change the law. And look at,
But that's where I think it can be very, very dangerous because again, we talk about like GLP-1s for as an example. There are so many companies now that literally all they do is if you want a GLP-1, you get on the phone with one of their doctors for a quick 30-minute call. And at the end of it, you get prescribed your GLP-1. And maybe there's ongoing management. I'm not really sure. But ultimately, they're sort of giving GLP-1s out like candy. And that ends up dealing with way more long-term risk to that patient because they're losing muscle mass. They're losing like longevity markers that are super, super important. And like, again, patients are not well equipped to administer their own health, but through companies like that, they basically are allowing people to. Mm-hmm. And I think if you sort of take that into the direction of AI, where you get rid of the doctor altogether, it's just going to get worse.
Well,
and again, like we think we need to like make sure that patients are educated consumers and understanding that like, yes, it's great to ask AI for its opinion, but don't use that as your ultimate like source of truth.
But it's interesting. If you get a 30-minute conversation with any one of these online peptide companies, I would be floored. I've messed with it.
Right. You're
peptide.
right. It's not definitely.
You don't even have to have a conversation.
No, you just type it in. If you want a GLP-1, just make yourself fat. It's really easy. Look at the BMI thing. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually 7-8 pounds more than I thought I was. Type that in. Oh, yep. Ding. Like credit card number. Ding. Your chart is being reviewed by your practitioner. There is absolutely no like. Who knows who's reviewing
it's really
it?
Bad. It's
like,
really bad.
It's really.
I was trying to be generous, but you're right. Yeah.
Well, that's in the abortion industry. The vast majority of our prescriptions, they're cell phone apps.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's you're like, wow, what could possibly go wrong? It's amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, if you don't mind, before we wrap up, we like to ask our guests some kind of rapid fire questions. Sometimes they're personal, sometimes they're based on what you're doing. So I want to ask you a couple of things. So quickly here, what is something that you do every week that makes you feel grounded and connected to your body and your wellness?
So every week or every day?
Or it could be even every day.
For me, exercising is like my me time. I love the feeling that I have when I can just focus on something that doesn't require brain power. And maybe that's just because I'm using my body and it makes me feel active. I mean, we sit at a desk so often. So I love moving my body. I love walks. I'm a huge fan of walking outside and using that to clear my brain. And then I would say a weekly practice that I do is I don't use my phone for like 12 hours at least. So like from Friday evening to Saturday midday, I just put my phone away. And it's really, beautiful. Really helpful. It's really helpful to like be present, like not necessarily be present with your body, but also being present with the people around you. Like oftentimes we have the distraction, like, let me just grab my phone and do that one thing. And then you go down a rabbit hole of doing a million other things and you're not actually enjoying the people that you're with. And I have really young kids. So for me, it's really, really important to, when I'm with them, I really want to be with them.
No, that's that. Awesome. And we've forgotten. I mean,
we went to
what it's been like not to have this tack on us all the time.
We went to a concert this weekend. And, 3 bands, it was all like my 1980s yacht rock stuff. And there was a guy that sat next to us who was probably in his mid 60s or early 70s. And he was either yelling at the person next to him or was on his phone.
It was FaceTime Live.
100% of the time. And I'm like, why did you spend money and come here and sit outside in Tampa where it is literally hotter than the surface of the sun, when you could just sit at home and look at your phone? I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's
That's
common.
sad. It's sad. I think it's also sad with younger kids. Like they don't know how to socialize. They don't know how to like be just like silently present. You know what I mean? Like they don't know how to just sit and be bored.
It's scary that we
It's
actually
really
have to talk
really
about
bad.
doing that as a be very intentional about doing that.
Mhm.
Because it used to be that you had to run to the landline, right?
Oh,
With the
yeah,
cord,
but-
or have your answering machine take a message and you wouldn't get it till you got home. I mean, I miss those days.
We were
But we need to do that.
we were raised of the generation. If you told your parents you were bored, like you were going to be doing chores for the next 12 and a half hours. Like you just left the house. I mean, it was the perfect parenting model. It was like, okay, I got to get this little
outside.
shit out of the house. How am I going to do it? Oh, he says he's bored. Oh, he's not going to say that because that worked once. He's going to leave. So we just went to the park or whatever, and it worked perfect.
Yeah, we used to try to go to the park anyway. What's and one last thing. So if you could have every new patient, ask their care team this one question, what would it be?
So when you say care team, you mean they're like traditional provider or
Yeah.
yeah.
Or provider or say
Or your
someone
team.
at your team.
Yeah.
Oh, if it's our team, I would say what more can I do? Like, I think that we appreciate when there's motivation to not necessarily like stay at baseline, but find those opportunities to further build resilience. And I would say I don't even have to ask our members to do that. That's part of the reason why they join the Lanby, so that they can have that conversation with their providers. I think when it comes to asking providers that are more traditional, a specific question, I would say ask them, like, what's your stance on, or what's your approach to finding the root cause of, the issues that I'm experiencing? Like if it's that you have high cholesterol, or if it's that you have, crazy hormone levels, like why is this happening? Can we spend some time to figure out the why? And I think that's going to help you as a patient figure out, like, does this doctor care about figuring out the root cause? Like, how do they think about it? And if they don't care, and if they're not willing to be investigators and figure that out, and they just want to sort of slap a prescription on it, I would sort of reevaluate that relationship. Because you don't necessarily have to be functionally trained to care to figure out what the root cause might be. But I think that that's a great opener to unlocking a lot about a physician or a provider.
Wonderful.
Outstanding.
Why don't you let everyone know how they can find out more about your company, the Lanby, or you online or social media?
Thanks. Well, you could find out a lot about the Lanby through our website. It's just thelanby.com. We also have a podcast, which is where we interview specialists on, different things that are of something more trendy, I would say. So just to like be able to get to either, demystifying that topic or just trying to educate people on that topic. So it's a great way to learn through patient, in patient language, like what to actually be thinking about and what's important versus what's fluffy. And then I would say our social media is another great way to stay in touch on all the things that we're working on, which is at the.lanby.
Perfect. We'll put those links in our show notes as usual. Any last parting words of wisdom, thoughts that you want to share?
I would say, I think that, too often we wait until something bad happens to start thinking about our health. And my one hope or what I want to manifest is like that more people start to think critically about investing in their health before something bad happens, so that you have time to mitigate that bad thing from happening. And that you also can, really thrive. I think we don't really even know what normal should be anymore. And I think we're just sort of playing hodgepodge and figuring out like what are the different little tricks and tools that we can use to hack our health, when really I think it's going about it in a really diligent, thoughtful manner and doing that through, a more functional, holistic approach to your health.
Couldn't agree more. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Chloe.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. All right, listeners. So if you've ever felt caught in between medicine, wellness, or confused about who to trust, what to do, check out the Lanby.com. That's the LANBY.com. Or you can find all their links there. And let's stop settling for fragmented care, start demanding better. So until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and of course, keep it BS free.